We're starting the 7th chapter of Bava Metzia. Hasocher et hapoalim, someone who hired workers. And the rest of the tractate is going to deal with all kinds of issues of contract. And so we'll see that this chapter is dealing with employment regulations, but also with questions of contract and questions of terms which are implied but not made explicit. So they're implied but not explicit. So let's just jump into the Mishnah. Someone hired workers and he told them to start early or to stay late. So he wanted to extend the hours. And the Mishnah rules, if there's a custom not to start early or not to stay late, he can't compel them. In other words, the practice goes according to local custom. It goes according to local custom. And the Mishnah continues, somewhere where the custom is to feed them, he feeds them. If the local custom is that you give your workers food, you have to give them food. L'sapek matika, what's l'sapek matika? Well, literally to make them satisfied with sweet things. Now, Jastrow suggests that this matika might be some kind of relish, might be something you put on your bread. Of course, literally, it means, you have to give them dessert. If the custom is you have to serve them a kind of a meal with dessert, you serve them a meal with dessert. We're not quite sure what this sort of food was, but of course the root matok is coming through matika. It's something sweet anyway. If he has to satisfy them with something sweet, he satisfy them. Hakol kaminhag hamadina. Everything goes according to the town, to local custom. And now we're going to have a story where actually the contract wasn't clear. Maaseh bi Rabbi Yochanan ben Metzia. So it happened that Rabbi Yochanan ben Metzia, she'amar livnot say uschor lanu polim. He told his son, go out and hire us some workers. Ufasaki mahem mazonot. He went out and he agreed with them food. It seems, by the way, he hasn't agreed with them what kind of food. He's just agreed in general. He's going to feed these workers. Shabbat sel aviv. Amar, when he came back to his father must have been shocked because he said to him, Afilu oselahem ki sudat shlomo b'sha'ato lo yatzata yedei chovatcha imahem. He said, my son, even if you make them a banquet like King Solomon's in his time, you will not have fulfilled your obligation to them. If you just generally agreed food, then there's no way of determining whether you properly fulfilled your obligation. And he continues, Shehein b'nei Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, because they are the sons of Avraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And it's not quite clear to me why he mentions this, although it occurs to me that, of course, one of the hallmarks of the house of Avraham, and by the way, one of the tests that was given to Rivka, the wife of Yitzchak, to see whether she was suitable to enter the house of Abraham, one of the characteristics was, of course, hospitality. So maybe there's a statement here that the children of Abraham are basically hospitable and they expect hospitality. So when you lay out if you give them food, you have to lay out a feast. So his father's very upset. How are we going to get out of this? So his father's going to give him some advice. Eila. Rather before they begin work. Now, we've discussed before the idea that before we begin work, we can change the terms of a transaction. And the Mishnah doesn't like it, by the way, There's a reference to someone who goes back on his word. If he's agreed to buy something and he doesn't, gosh, that's like the heavens will take revenge on him, will punish him like the generation of the flood. But in this situation, it seems as though we can alter, let's say, the outside, or we can clarify the contract before work starts. After work starts, it's a different matter, as we've already learned. But before, before they start work, say ve'emor, go out and say to them, go and say to them, on condition you only have bread and pulses. Sorry, pat vekitnit. These are kitniot, by the way. Interesting to learn this around the end of Nisan. They'll only have bread and pulses. This is clearly the minimal meal at the time. So he wanted to clarify the contract. And interestingly, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is going to come and object. And by the way, the Rambam makes clear that the halacha goes according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, Lo hayat sarich. He didn't have to do that. Hakol keminhag ha-medina. Everything follows local custom. You don't have to be afraid of some exorbitant meal being required for your workers, because everything goes according to local custom, and you can rely on local custom for labor laws. And that's quite an important principle, and we're going to see that later in the Mishnah.